those of us
I'm just going to start recording.
Yeah,
just keep on going.
You got it. No. So it was one of those, like when I started, I looked at this thing and I thought to myself, like, I started CrossFit 12 years ago, and I'm like, where was this in the Wild West days? That's what I've always called CrossFit back in the day.
The level method you're talking about. Can we and anyone listening, we just kind of hopped into what we're doing here because we were talking pre-call and it was so good. I'm like, I got to hit record. So we're talking about level method.
Yeah, no, definitely. So looking at the map, I mean, so bringing people in, like we were talking about before, when I get people who've done CrossFit, 5, 6, 10, 12 years, 2 years, just came from another gym 6 months ago, whatever the case is that moves to town. They look at the level method for the first time. They look at the map and literally you just see eyeballs just like, and then you just see scanning and scanning and scanning. They're like, oh my God, what is happening? And they're like, it starts making sense. So then I start pointing out the obvious stuff for traditional CrossFitters, like, oh, this is Annie here with neurological and core endurance. And then, here's Diane up here at upper and lower body endurance. And then lactate tolerance is Fran, so then once I start saying those names, they start making connections, right? But 75% of those people, when they look at it, they have the same look on their face. And I'm pretty sure I had when I first saw the big map, when I got it in the gym, I was like, man, where was this? 12 years ago. Like, I know that there were probably systems similar, but not as effective as I've seen this map. And the map itself it speaks volumes. It's like when you go into a museum, like, I don't know if you've ever been to Europe. I mean, I spent grad school over in Italy. So, I spent some time in Rome and then in Florence, and I went to all the different museums, and, you sit there and you take time just analyzing things, and you're like, first thing that pops in your mind for those types of museums and art, you're like, man, this is like way older than like my country, right? It's like, this is crazy. But in the same token, like that's kind of the feeling that I think that if I had to relate to having the map on the wall, that's what I feel like, because it's considered art for our profession, for fitness, right? Because it's something that you look at, you analyze, you really delve into like the depths of it if you choose to, which a lot of people do, because everybody's intrigued to want to improve and increase and progress. And so the question has always been like, how do you do that in a structured way, aside from somebody coaching you, right? Aside from giving you guidance and a coach laying a plan out for you, like, oh, I want to get stronger in my pull-ups. Okay, well, this is progression. This is how we're going to do it, right? That's how traditionally it tends to work. But what I found is that when people have the tangible asset right in front of them, and it's there every day they walk in, they get to see it. And that's what and that's what gives them the accountability, not just me coaching, not just, my gym, it's open for them. And, it's not that, it's the map, and it's the picture on the wall that gives them a clear picture. And that's a cliche that we always use. It's the picture on the wall, follow the path, right? Like, we hear that all the time. And here it is. There is a picture on the wall, and it's the path. And that's what people have to follow. So, those traditional CrossFitters that come in, they have that mentality. Like, I feel like if I had to ask them that, I should probably do like a survey for new people who come in who do CrossFit. Like, hey, what was your thoughts about the map? Like, honestly, like, give me your honest breakdown. And I know some of them coming from the traditional CrossFit may have kind of that arrogance of, I was an RX athlete, I'm not doing this stuff that, because I do get that. And I think it's kind of just a natural reaction, because who wants to be told they have to do something scaled if they can do it RX, right? But once I take the time and I explain it, and it took me a little bit to finesse this, because it was kind of like, whoa, like, okay, I get it. You're an RX athlete. Like, that's cool. That's great. However, this is how the process works. And once I kind of developed my script, and it kind of changes, because I don't have one script that is a catch-all, because it just doesn't work, because every individual is different. Everybody's perceptions on things are different. Their communication patterns are different. So you have to be able to adapt per the individual. So it makes sense that you kind of have a general idea of how you're going to do it. So you have to have your markers of, this is what I need to explain, no matter if it's a person who's accepting of it or objective of it, or kind of really not wanting to do it. Like, how do you treat those types of people, and how do you get them to buy into it? That's the biggest part, is like, you have to sell a little bit more to those who are a little bit more against wanting to do it.
Yeah,
So,
there's a couple things here because the level method in general, it's a big system, right? And like you do have a military background, and do you think that played into the way you've implemented the way you do things at all in terms of from the system perspective?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I would have to say, and all my coaches can attest to this too, especially my other full-time coach that I had, that she's been with me since the beginning. 100%. My military background, leadership training that I got in the Marine Corps, that's how I stay steady and keep accountability, right? Because you have to define that line of being a coach, being friendly, but still guiding, right? And sometimes it takes that tough love. And sometimes I actually say that now to some people, like, because they kind of give me a look and I'm like, it's tough love. I mean, I got to be real with you. That looks really shitty. You need to fix it, right? And I have other coaches that just aren't quite to that level yet, which is fine. I mean, teach their own. Everybody has their own characteristics, their own personality traits, and their own engagement. But I am a tough love kind of guy. But I do it in a finesse way. I don't say, hey, that looks shitty, and then walk away, right?
Like, honesty. Yeah. I think within business, you have these elements of like, you need transparency. You need to be able to control. You have to know your numbers. You have to have handles on things. And I think that like without a standard, you have no handles. So it's like, how would you navigate in a situation like that where you want to do better in business or whatever, but then you have no real metrics to measure those things, And, before we were talking, or before we started recording, we were talking about the reason we are having this call. And the big thing is that you had posted a few things in the group about, marketing and just some of these fundamentals that I think is really important. You'd mentioned that you'd gained 23 people in your gym in the last 8 weeks. So, for everybody listening, AJ's on here because he's like really, he's practicing what he preaches in a lot of ways. And so what I want from you, AJ, is just to kind of maybe tell us a little bit about the past 2 months, because it is the holiday season, right? Anybody in the gym business knows the holidays can be tough, but again, we were just talking about how it's been pretty good for you. So just give us a little snapshot of like what the gym looks like right now and sort of what you're doing.
Yeah. So again, per our conversation prior to recording, but I mean, out of nowhere, I just started getting people walking through the door. And it was like, I mean, a couple people, don't get me wrong, there were a couple people like, I had gym members like, hey, I have a friend that wants to join. You always get that text or that message, and so you're like, all right, the process, but here you go. I'll give you the link for the millionth time. This is where you send them to sign up, and we'll get them going through the process. Because I always do a day one with every single person who comes through my gym. A day one's just a free day intro. And in that time frame, I basically use the, I'll have to find the sheet, but it's the level method, kind of that initiator, like this is the intro. Right. So I use that as my day one, and we test them, front squat, upper body pull, lactic tolerance. But I spend the first 20, 30 minutes just talking about my gym, my culture. And then I delve into the level method and how it progresses people and how it's designed for a group platform, but individually it's even more beneficial. I go through the whole shebang on that. But these last few months, it's been crazy because a lot of my members who have been with me, I would probably say for at least a year, maybe even my 2-year mark since I've had level method, they've all bought into it to the point where legitimately, like I hear stories all the time of how they are telling their friends, because before it's always like the cliche of CrossFit talks about CrossFit. Well, now my CrossFitters, my gym members talk about level method. That's legitimately the conversation of topic for almost every single person, because all those friends who have came in these last 2 months have all talked about, yeah, I know the level method because, so-and-so was telling me about it, and they say how much they like the progression and it works really good for them. Like that is now the new talk about CrossFit. It's talk about level method because everybody loves the mat, because of the tangibility, that to be able to see it kind of thing and know where you need to go. So it gives people the path. So that has been a majority of the people that have came in from word of mouth from their friends or people posting on their social media. Like I will make my post when people graduate foundations. And then they obviously then share it on their social media, and then their friends start seeing things. And so some of the other people who've walked in have been like, well, I have a friend who has a friend who has, and I saw it on social media. So I wanted to come check it out for myself because, you know, I see that you guys are celebrating their victories, right? And that's another impactful moment that you guys have always mentioned, like making impactful moments for people, right? Well, it actually comes true. Like it actually does happen if you're consistent. Yeah, it does. It works. You just have to be consistent with it. That's the problem. And sometimes, you know, I get it as a business owner. I mean, on top of owning this business, you know, I got a blended family, 5 kids, they all play sports. And then on top of that, I'm a professor up at the university here. So I teach as well. So, I mean, I get it. I'm busy. I have a lot of things going on, and sometimes my social media tends to falter a little bit, but I'm always very adamant about when people graduate foundations that we take that picture. It only takes me like 10 to 15 seconds for me to put that picture up, write a little blurb real quick, and then post it on both my Instagram and Facebook. So gaining from the membership word of mouth has been a huge thing. And word of mouth, I'm also including obviously the social media posts. It's not necessarily them talking to the person specifically, but communication is communication. Right? There's different platforms that we use. And for that matter, that's word of mouth for me. And then everybody else who's flown into my gym, you know, I'd probably have to say at least 50% of that 23 has been just, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know if it's like finally society, COVID, like everything's like, all right, this is the way the world's going to be. I need to get my shit in shape and I need to be healthy.
And so where are those people, like when you do ask them, what do they say? Like
a lot of them. So a couple of them, my favorite ones are, I've taken a 10-year vacation from fitness, or a 5-year vacation from fitness. A lot of them are just people that I think they've hit that point in their life. And a lot of them are my older people. I don't want to say older.
Well,
people.
did they search, you know, did they
search you? Yeah. So all it was is they looked it up. They either saw it potentially on my social media posts that are public, obviously not just from a friend, but they just saw my social media posts. I got a marketing guy now that does videos for me too. Really, really good. I started doing testimonials, which has been a huge, like I started doing the stats. You know how you can pull it up on Instagram and Facebook? Like my biggest views and hits have been my testimonials. And everybody on the 3 testimonials that I've done so far, I've done 2 more, but we're still working on the production for those. They all mention the level method. They all talk about level method or leveling up, and talking about the progression and how it works. But yeah, a lot of those have been just the focus on the social media posts that have been there. Right. So those are the ones that have been grabbing people, you know, specifically.
So there's a number of things, right? Like, so you had said that, you know, you got word of mouth, and then you have a bunch that you don't quite know where they're coming from, but it just seems like something's happened. You've turned a corner and now you're just getting people, right? And I have to point out the importance of consistency over time, right? So in that time, while, you know, you're posting consistently, right? So you have social media posts, there are testimonials, there are things that are like out there. It's not just, you're not doing anything. It's like, okay, you're putting something out there. Then it pushes them to the website, and the website has a clear call to action. Now, I think most people aren't too worried about I think everybody has a call to action. They should on their page, but your website's very clear. I checked it out. It just, you know, people know what to do. They know what to expect. It's clear, right? And I think those 2 things of having, you need leads, and then you need a way to engage them. And it doesn't stop there for you though, right? Because you said that when anybody that comes in day 1, what are you doing? You're doing the session with them, and there's a very controlled message that comes from you. So it's like everyone's being funneled into a controlled message, right? And then after they're getting indoctrinated into sort of the language and all this sort of stuff. And so I do want to point that out in terms of, like, whenever I look at a business or a gym that has it together and that they're doing things very well, those things are in place, right? You don't accidentally get members like, like you're not doing anything at all, and people are just like, never happens. It doesn't happen in business because business is very, like, if you don't do something, nothing is going to happen. Even if you wish it and hope it all day long, it's like, you know, you're lost. So I think that's really important. So yeah, let me look at my notes here, because I just kind of went off. I just wanted to make those points because, as we're looking at gaining 20, 30 members in a couple months, I mean, 15 members a month, right? Or, 12, 13, 14 members a month. That's a solid gain.
For sure.
And if gyms can have that consistently, in just a few months, things are going to be, there's less pressure. You're feeling more on top of it. You have more resources. But I think it's important that when you work with like a company that's going to get you all these leads, it's like, if they're not quality, they're just going to fall off on the back end, but you're still doing the foundations, sort of the initial foundation. That kind of leads me actually to the foundation course. So like, what do you do after somebody joins? So they do their day one with you, and then what happens?
So basically, towards the end of the day one, after we do the 3 assessments that I mentioned, obviously, which is the first group category on the map, because that's just what was written. We basically talk about, okay, these are your options. And this took me a while. It really did, to kind of finesse it to the point where it works for me and my gym and how I set things up. I used to do the whole group on-ramping thing, and that was before level method. I did the on-ramp concept. We still called it foundations, but it's like everybody knows it as on-ramp. Like, you take a class of like, anywhere between 5 to 12 new people, and then you put them in this classroom setting, but it's designed just for the basics, right? And so that was just what I found was I was taking a lot of extra time to do this, on top of my basic follow through rate. Was like, my percentage was like, I was in like the 60-70%, maybe somewhere in there, as far as like getting people from those classes, because I used to do it for free. And this is in the beginning though. This is like, you had to do something to get people in the door, right? So here, let me give it to you for free. And then I started realizing, well, people maybe might start paying for it. So then I started adding, and then before I knew it, I was charging more, and I was getting more quality people. But once I got them through the foundations, my closing rate was still at that like 70%. And I just wasn't liking it, man. So starting at the first of this year of 2021, I chose to completely take away any class setup for on-ramp, for foundations. I do personal training only. And a lot of it has to do with people in our group, people in other CrossFit blog groups, things like that have just, they said, this is where it's at. This is the money maker. And of course, you always want to make the money, but I was more interested in the quality of retention and the quality that I was giving people. Anybody who's ever taught a class can guarantee and should say that they can't give 100% to every single person. You have to divide your attention to everybody, right? So you take somebody who's brand new, who's never done CrossFit or hasn't done any fitness in like 10 years, and you put them in a group of people with all variable backgrounds, but everybody out of shape and not understanding dynamics and different types of techniques and things like that. Now you're taking 7 people who are all in the same boat, and you have to divide your attention, and you can only give a little bit at a time, because you got to still stay within your time constraints. How effective and how good a quality is that going to be? It's going to be the best you can give it, which is going to stress you the fuck out, basically. On top of, now I'm training coaches to learn how to do this. So now I'm training somebody to learn how to do this. That is like, what is happening? We've all been there when we first started coaching. We're like, oh my God, that's the squatting. And you're like 5 million things. You're like, what do I fix first? Right. So all this stuff gets collected, right? And so I started realizing I needed to narrow things down. So now I do everything on a personal training basis to start everybody. It makes it easier, and I've improved my profit margin, because now I charge way more, because now I'm doing personal training. So once everybody has gone through day one, sometimes I get people that just skip day one and say, I want to start right now. Cool. So my day one of foundations is kind of similar to how I would do my day one free for people who are interested, except for our assessments are different, because I follow my foundations pattern. So it's not the 3 from group 1. It's more of like my neurological core, my squat endurance, and upper body push.
Now, your day one is is not a no sweat intro, right? Like, so do you do no sweat intros? I know that's super common.
Yep.
A lot of people do those.
So I offer that. So I'm straight up with people. I'm like, if you do not want to do these assessments, you don't have to. You're not forced to, but this is my opportunity and your opportunity to get to see how we coach and how we run this. I was like, my goal is to just get you on that map, right? And white one, obviously, is the lowest that you can get. And for most people on that map, I've taken everybody from, 10-year vacations to somebody who's super fit, obviously, and I put them on the map, right? And that's kind of like a little bite of what it's like to be on the map, because I talk about the map. The map is the biggest piece to everything that I do. It's our programming. It's our incentivized progression pattern for everybody to get better, right? Like everything about the gym and how I run members being here is based off the level method, because that's what we use, right? So it makes sense that it's the same thing like drink the Kool-Aid for CrossFit. Like it's CrossFit. Again, yes, level method is CrossFit methodology and it's the same stuff, but it's systemized. It's a process and it's a program. So it makes sense that that's what I use. And so it is a no sweat if they choose to, and I tell them that when I talk to them. But what does everybody do? They show up in workout gear and they're ready to go.
What do you think the percentages of people that opt, well, a couple percentages, the people that show up and they choose not to do a no sweat and then they do it? What's that percentage?
Oh man, I would probably have to say that it's definitely less than 10%. Definitely less than 10% for people who choose not to. And honestly, it's probably, I'm trying to remember the last time I had somebody who didn't do the assessments, and I think they were in a time crunch. I had enough time to talk about my system and talk about the level method, and then they had to go to an appointment. So they couldn't do, because they were all dressed up for whatever their appointment they had to do. I can't remember. I think it was like they were doing some kind of interview for, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, most of the time, dude, everybody comes in and wants to do it.
And the second one is people that skip the day one and just go straight into the program.
That one, I would probably say that's probably about 20%.
Okay.
I'd probably have to say. And that's what it's been lately. Out of those 23 people, I'd probably have to say that 20% of those were people who walked in and said, I give them the opportunity. I still explain what day one is. And then I say, or we can just get started if that's what you want to do. And then I tell them, I'm like, what I do in day one is very similar to what I'm going to do for your first day of foundations. And if you're ready to start, because just based on interaction. And so this is that rapport building. This is what I do in the very beginning. I talk to everybody who signs up for anything in my gym. I'm the person who does the talking. I don't have another coach that does anything. I'm the one who does all the engagement with every single person who joins my gym. And
that's like really controlling the communication. Now, you think that you could in time train somebody to do that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I have my other coach, Ann. She's the one that's been with me since the very beginning. There are times that I do have her do it based on my initial interaction with certain people. Like if I have a conversation with, let's say, a 57-year-old gal who's still working, who's had a hysterectomy, who has like this barrage of things that make them uncomfortable. Because, I mean, everybody can pretty much attest, I hope, would attest to females are the most vulnerable ones who come in the doors. They are, because there's a lot of insecurities. There's a lot of, confidence. There's just a lot of things that are happening. So I know that a lot of females feel more comfortable working with other females to begin with until they get used to it. So that's why having Ann as my second hand, my lieutenant, my XO, basically, right? She's my XO. And it's funny because that's how I'm the CO. She's the XO. She's my XO, and anytime that I have somebody who's generally a female that I know is kind of in the vulnerable phase, because I could just tell just based on interaction, either talking on the phone, even sometimes texting, I can just base it on assumptions on my interactions. I'll have her do everything that I normally do. I'll be like, hey, I have a perfect coach for you. She's going to reach out and she's going to set things up with you. Same thing with people who come with maybe some limitations. Previous surgeries, things of that nature, because she went and got her master's certification. She does her adaptive certification. So she deals with all the modification stuff as well. So she's like my adaptive, like professor expert here, right? So anytime I get those types of potential members, I send her directly to them. And so we basically divide and conquer. We make up each other's, strengths and weaknesses. very well as far as getting people to engage. I mean, since I went to PT and I started dividing up instead of me controlling everything as far as getting people started, because I like that, because I wanted people to see the face, the brand of my gym. Like, I want people to come in and I want to talk to them and I want them to get to know who I am. I'm not just the guy who runs the books in the back and does things. I mean, I coach. I love coaching. I love interacting with my people. So I make sure that I'm a face that everybody sees, because I've been to gyms before where I'm like, been there for a minute and I'm like, I've never seen the owner and I've been here for 3 years. Like, who's the owner, right? So, it's one of those things that's kind of near and dear to me, because I want to make sure that happens. But as far as dividing and conquering, and takes the other people that I feel would be a better fit. And I'm training my other coaches to slowly get up to that PT phase too, because I want everybody to have the opportunity. The best way to learn how to coach is one-on-one. Like, you learn way more that way versus get stuck into a class and try to figure out how to correct 15 problems at the same time.
Right.
So that's kind of a big thing for me, is to make sure that we have the continuity. Yeah.
And so you move now to this, and that was good. Like, we took a little jump into that specific, because that's I think super important to clarify. Now you're doing PT only now.
Yep.
So walk us through sort of the way that's gone. And that's what we recommend, like PT first, and just because you get that super strong connection, you get to focus with somebody, they get your attention, you build the relationship, they feel special, and they know you're the owner, they know that you're taking time. Like, there's a lot of really important stuff there. So what happens in those sessions, and how did you come to what you're doing now?
So before, when we were doing the classes, I would have some people that were not able to fit class time. So I had to do some PT with them. And what I realized was the quality of a novice person coming into classes was a lot better, because we spent more time with that one individual. And that's where things started, like the wheels started turning. I'm like, all right, this is just, we're getting better. And the retention was higher. When you take a class of people and you rush them, I don't want to say rush, but you're technically rushing. If you're only doing 8 days to try to teach them everything you know about CrossFit and to be ready for a class, like, for some people that's okay, because I still, to this day, even in my PT foundations, I'm like, you're still going to learn a lot in classes, but I'm going to give you everything you need to know basic foundation wise. When you have classes, you can't really do that effectively. So my retention rate wasn't very high after the first 3 months of somebody starting classes with me. I started seeing people drop off because they did the foundations, they would come into a couple classes, and then you can kind of see them in the back corner, or weren't really engaging with people, or maybe they did, but they just weren't feeling like they were getting the quality that they needed. I mean, for all different reasons, who knows, right? Aside from doing a survey, but if they leave, they're probably not going to do a survey for me anyways. The PT was what fit. That's what made more sense. Quality over quantity is what I decided to do for my business. Quality gave me better outcomes, higher retention rate, and, in all honesty, higher profit margin. 100%. I realized that the less stress and the less that I was having to be here doing classes for new people, like, in return, I would bring 2 or 3 people on to make up what I was used to charging for 7, 8, 10 people in a class, because the classes were a little bit cheaper, because it just was, the quality was like a regular class, right? So, the PT was just the value. And I'm increasing here at the first of the year, because I realized the quality, the value that I've now delivered, because now that I've established long enough in the community, people recognize the quality of coaching and the quality of just programming and the gym that we offer. People are willing to pay. And the only way you're going to know people are going to pay is you change your price. Change your price.
And then they pay.
And then they pay. And you're like, dang, why didn't I do this 2 years ago? And I guarantee everybody who listens to this will say that they probably had that point in their life, in their business, where they're like, I should have did this 3, 4, or 5 years ago, right? Like, and of course, I had the same epiphany happen to me. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to charge this, and either they're going to want to pay it or they're not. And I'll know within like 3 or 4 months if I have no PTs, like, oh shit, maybe I should drop the price a little bit, and kind of see what works. But I continue to raise, and I still get people to keep paying. So, the foundations that we offer is an 8-day class, basically, and 7 days is us getting through all of the assessments. And then the 8th day is I have a hogback test that I do. So it's kind of like the initiator, like this is a good benchmark for you because I came up with it for the gym because I program it at least once a year in my gym. So that way everybody gets to see kind of where they fall into the category of progression, not only from the mat, but from our own personal one.
And like, that's, I think, a super important point there is the culture that creates, right? It's like everybody goes through an initiation and it's unique. It's unique to your gym, right? So it's not like a system that's global or anything.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. And people love it. And it's a great opportunity, again, to, like you said, to kind of build that connection, and it makes it ours. It's traditionally ours. So we have the hogback test. We actually, the reason why, I call it CrossFit Hogback is because we actually have a mountain here that's called Hogback Mountain. So once a year as a gym for a Saturday class, guess what we do? We go hike Hogback Mountain together and we get to the top. And, it's kind of one of those things. You have to create that culture within your gym. Everybody has something completely different that they do. But if you don't, and you just run a business, then that's the quality of people you're going to bring into your gym. And that's the kind of people you're going to keep in your gym. And that's the atmosphere that you're going to create as well. That's a huge key element for me, is atmosphere, is you create a culture, and it cultivates on its own. And what happens is things that you weren't expecting happen. People become friends. People get married, right? They meet each other here. Like we had our first couple that got engaged, and they're going to get married here pretty soon, like officially they met here and they wouldn't have met anywhere else, kind of thing. Right. So it's kind of cool to kind of see that stuff, but things happen, and you have to allow them to organically grow within your gym. You have to know that there are some things you can't control, and that's people. You can control their ideas and their visions by incentivizing them and encouraging them, but in the end, you still can't control them. So if you get people who are resistive to the level method, for example, or they start getting mad because I know you've seen these threads, I am instituting at the first of the year expirations on levels. And the way I'm doing it is anybody who's purple and up, either a full athlete in purple and up or categorized in any of those purple and up, you have 6 months to test, because I'm going to do a testing cycle in January. I'm going to follow the assessment with everybody else, and then I'm going to do one in July, kind of that 6-month break. Or I'll probably try to figure out when you guys are doing yours, and I'll do it in that time. But there's a 6-month time frame that you need to assess either that category or all of them, because you're an athlete, you're going to be purple and up anyways. And then everybody else, blue and below, has 12 months. That way it gives everybody an opportunity to do 2 testing cycles at the bare minimum that I'm going to offer, plus what you guys put in the programming, because now I'm starting to see the assessments in the programming, which works really good. On top of, I'm going to do Saturdays. I'm going to probably do like 1 Saturday a month where it's going to be a testing Saturday. So if you've missed, this is your opportunity to come in. So that gives us basically 6 Saturdays, a testing cycle, a 6-month testing cycle for you to come in and make sure things get done. But back to that, when the assessments started coming in the programming, what I noticed is that if I offered who wants to test versus you are testing, you see a difference, right? Now, if you just put it out to say, if you would like to test, let me know. What I realized is I started creating kind of an obstacle for myself when it came to testing, like actual testing, because people were like, well, if I was given the option then, why do I need to now? And I was more fitter when I did that last time, and I'm not as fit now because everybody hates going down, right? And so you have to do that whole spiel of explaining about how fitness isn't linear, and obviously it does this and that. And the people who get it, get it. Those are the people who test all the time anyways. But the people who are the one-time hit wonders that are like, I got black for my first time, or I got a red. And it's like, yeah, now you have to sustain that. That's how kind of fitness works. And they're like, dang it. Right. So you kind of have to deal with all that. Right. And it's like, how do you manage that? It's more stress. It feels like it's more stress. It's like, you don't want to deal with people. Bottom line, if you're not a people person and you can't deal with conflict well, then you're going to struggle with this portion of it. 100%. I see it on the daily. Part of behavioral communication stuff that I teach is conflicts. I teach conflict resolution. I teach about conflict management strategies, things like that, how to deal with people and in that nature, because everybody 100% deals with conflict on the daily. but a lot of people aren't effective at it. So they fear it. They're vulnerable when it comes to conflict. So you're, as a gym owner and as a coach, are going to deal with it daily with people when it comes to assessments or getting people to be a little bit more aware of how fitness works. They know it. They just don't want to hear it. Nobody wants to hear that they're fat, they're slow, that they suck. Nobody wants to hear that, right? So the map, again, best quality of tangible, progression. Great. Problem is that that there's a different direction you could go. It's not always up. Sometimes you could go down, and people don't like that. Psychologically, it's not a good thing. And so how do you deal with that as a coach and an owner? Like, how do you finesse that it's okay to lose, if you will, or go down?
It's a super interesting point, because level method was designed for a lot of things, but one of the big things is it was designed to get beginners sort of plugged into fitness and get them progressing along this line. And I think the problem of leveling down happens with like those intermediate to advanced people that are kind of they didn't just start, because when you just start, you're going to level up every time for like a year or a year and a half. Like, it's just going to come. You're not going to have to do anything. It's just going to go. But then it's going to reach that point where now it's like not so much neurological adaptations. It's like we're at the point where we need to make physical gains and changes, and that slows things down. And if you're not on top of it, like with progressions and different things, it will digress. I think that's the right word, right? Regress faster, right? It's just going to regress pretty quickly. And so it's a really interesting point. Like, I haven't really thought of that. I've thought of it generally, but not in the way that you put it just now, where it's like, this sort of conflict. And I think one of the additional things that might make it more difficult is that these are athletes who are pretty good, and so they're maybe more willing to butt up against you, right? Like, and say like, no, I'm not gonna, or whatever. So it's like it adds this additional layer of difficulty. So what's your advice when it comes to that sort of stuff?
In all honesty, again, as I mentioned before, everybody's different. You have to, hopefully you already know this person and you're able to engage with them, right? So you have to have a honest conversation. And, in all honesty, just because I teach communication doesn't mean that I'm a 100% expert and I can deal with it at all times, right? I had to learn this as a business owner, because one of my biggest fears was like, oh, what if I lose them as a member? Like, that's money. In my mind, like, I'm losing money, right? But at the same token, I'm like, it's a person. So why don't I just talk to them as a person? And in the end, you have to make the decision. What's better? The quality of you as a person, as an owner and as a coach, feeling better about the value that you give people. And you can basically, the cliche of sleep at night, because you made the right decision based on how you felt as a coach and as an owner, not, am I going to lose money? Because guess what? You're going to be able to find somebody to replace that person easy, because people are going to come through the door if you're doing all those other parts that we just talked about at the beginning of the podcast, right? So you should never have fear of losing people, because if you have a system in place to make sure there are people to come back in and fill those spots, you shouldn't have to worry. Now, if you are one of those people that worry, then you should be fixing the first part of what we talked about, which is the system to get people in, because that becomes the spiral, right? You're like, oh, I got people. Yes, great. Oh, I'm losing people. What do I do? Right? So when you deal with people specifically, you have to be honest. Bottom line. That's the only way. That was the best gains. And the first time I started doing that as a business owner, I was like,
you don't have to fabricate anything or think about anything. It's like,
exactly. You're like, how do I make this work? Like, what can you like start scripting things out? Like, okay, I'll be really nice. And then how do I break it? It's like trying to break news to somebody. It's like, you're a great person, but sometimes like, no, it's like, you know what, guess what? Like, hey, this is how it works. Like, and sometimes that's where my military stuff comes in. And that's where I'm like, look, dude, bottom line, this is the system I run and this is how I do it. Either you go along with me and you play along, or guess what? There's another gym in town if you really want to go to that one. And most of the time, all my gym members know the other gym, because we only have 2 CrossFit affiliates here. The other gym doesn't do classes as often. I think they do like maybe 6 classes a week. Everything else is open gym. It's 24/7 open gym. And so they know, bottom line, quality is going to be different. They're going to be over there and they're going to be doing things themselves. They're not going to be coached. There's not that safety factor of somebody watching them to make sure they're doing things safely. So, the added benefit that I have, like, hey, if they choose them over me, they don't belong in my gym, period. And then once I realized that part, I was like, oh man, this is so much easier. Like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, get out of my gym. Like, I don't really care, because guess what? Like, you don't belong here anyways. I mean, I mentioned that looking at somebody as money, like, you have to look at them as a person, and you have to look at what do they contribute to the community? What do they contribute to you as a person, as an owner? Is it worth dealing with the constant? I mean, I see this all the time in our group. I see it in the in the CrossFit owners group all the time. Well, I have this member that, blah, 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 blah. And it's something to deal with conflict. And it's how do I deal with this person? Like, they always get mad when you coach them. Like, yeah. Like, and the owners who have figured it out, their easy answer is like, kick them out. But it's like, it's not that easy when you're first trying to do it, right? You wouldn't be asking that question if it was that easy for that person, right? Like kick them out. Like, so I take that to the level method. If people come to me and say, well, I don't like, it's usually the people who come from other CrossFit gyms who've never done level method, and they wonder why I'm making them go through foundations. I make everybody go through foundations. I don't care if fucking Rich Froney walked into my gym, Matt Frazier, Tia Toomey walked into my fucking gym and wanted to join. No bullshit. I'm not kidding, dude. I say this as a haha funny joke, but I literally would make them do it. One, because I want to see how they fucking test anyways. But two, because that's the system. I don't change it for anybody. I don't make exceptions for anybody, because I believe in the system and I believe in the progression. I totally 100% believe in how the system works in my gym, because I've done it for over 2 years now, and I've seen what it does for people, and I've seen what it has done for my gym. No exceptions. People have to do it. So when I get the feedback of people kind of, well, I don't want to test, or I could just tell, because I asked the question when I first started doing it, who wants to test today? Half the people are like, I haven't been. They know, because I look at them, because I'm like, you've only been here 2 days a week for the last 3 months. So you probably don't want to test, because you know where you're going to test. I now no longer allow the option for choice. I really don't. And, take it or leave it. Like, just don't. I mean, people cherry pick anyways. Now that they know that's my system, like, you have to test. I still get those cherry pickers that show up, because they know I'm going to make them test, because eventually you have to succumb to it. You have to realize that, and it's hard, dude. I'm a 40-year-old male. I got ego still. You got ego. All of us have ego, especially in the fitness world, but males more so. And it's hard to take that gulp when you realize that your fitness level isn't where it could have been or should be, or, where it was, 3, 4, or 5 months ago. Once you get people comfortable with that idea that it's okay to go down, because guess what? You're going to have another opportunity to test it and get it back. Like, that's kind of what I'm starting to now preach to people. I'm like, guess what? You lose it. That makes you work harder to get it back, and probably surpass where you've been stuck. Because we talked about the plateau earlier. Eventually those intermediate to advanced athletes, they stop. And guess what? They probably will regress. And guess what? Most of the time that's happened so far, I'd probably say within the last year, they've surpassed where they were stuck at plateaued, because they had to work to get back to it, and worked hard enough to not only get back to it, but pass it, and finally get past that point. And they're like, that's all it took. I'm like, yeah, maybe you just needed to suck a little to be better.
Right. I mean, it's all quantified, because that same thing is going to happen in normal, regular CrossFit. Like, you're just doing random stuff. You're getting fitter and stronger in all sorts of different areas. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, now that you know, it's like, okay, that kind of helps pinpoint some things. And now, do you do goal sessions or anything like that?
So I started doing the goal sessions when you guys redid the website, and you guys kind of changed everything up a little bit. It's all fancy, by the way. I fucking love it. When you changed it all up, like, I started playing around with it a little bit, because I just haven't been able to make the webinars. And sometimes I can get on there and I can watch the videos and stuff, but I just busy in other directions. But once I kind of started playing with it, I just started kind of delving into it a little bit. And because I've had a lot of people recently say, hey, I want to work on this, whether it's upper body or whatever, core, like, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a shot. And I did. I started doing it, I want to say probably about 3-4 months ago. I started starting that progression of kind of building it into the PT. That's my initial start. And these are members, when I talk about personal training, people who already have as members, not people who are starting, but people who are already members who need that extra training. So I started using it and I started playing around with it and figured out how to set things up, give them homework. It's in the system. We set up the next session. And I was telling Ann just the other day, I'm like, Ann, because I was telling her about how it works, because I have her starting to kind of do it and using it now. And I'm like, Ann, check this thing out. So we did it. This was probably about a month ago. I had her do her first one. She's like, and I looked at her, I was like, yeah, pretty fucking awesome, right? And she's like, dude, like everything's right here, everything you need, and it's in the system, which makes it that much more efficient. It's not like you're putting it away in a file cabinet, which I have one right here in front of me from all the old days of this is how we did things. I still keep paper trail when we do assessments, but everything's in the system, but paper trail is good for me too. But anyway, we don't do paper trails for personal training anymore because it's all in the system and it's in there. My notes are in there. So if Ann has to pick up one of my people because I'm gone or it just doesn't fit my schedule, she looks back on my notes and see what I put in for that person and what their assignments were or what they had to do to progress, because then she could pick up where I left off.
That's really
vice versa. Yeah. So, I mean, that system alone, dude, has been great.
So that like a big thing with that is the success plans. You had mentioned that, people now are getting to the point after you've been doing the level method for a number of years, the members really start to understand it. They're like, oh, and they start to game it. And then this is what it was like. Another thing it's designed to do is to get people to be, incentivized to specifically work weaknesses.
For sure.
And they come to you. They're like, hey, I want to do this. In a normal environment, that would never happen. But relative to all their other scores, they can see, okay, this one's where I want to do it. And we found like the success plans or the goal sessions, when you think about like the regular environment of a gym, you have when you join, right? So you join, and that's really where you get the real solid connection, the relationships, everything's built in that time. And then it's into classes, right? And then classes is more broad, maybe touches here and there. Hey, there's never really any strong connection point. And that's what the goal session or the success plan does, is it forces, it doesn't force, but if you do it, it creates an environment where you can connect with a person and then dig into their why, deeper. And then that connects that relationship. That's then even it's stronger now over a longer period of time. And that whole, the what you want, why you want it, and then the prioritized list with like the colors, red is the musts, and then you see all the levels. That right there, when someone gets that, even now, because that was developed, we talked about all this stuff and we built this into level method. And every time I see it, even today, I'm like, dude, this is the best tool. Check this out. And like someone sees it, and they're like, wow, this is freaking badass.
It is. It's super effective because, I really like the way you guys set it up, because part of group membership needs, inclusion, control, and affection are the three things. And part of the progression for people wanting to be a part of something is they have to feel the needs and wants. They have to feel what is my need. Well, most people obviously, they want fitness, they want health. They need it because otherwise they can't function, quality of life, yada, yada, yada. We can talk about that for days. But then there's the wants, right? And the wants are something that requires more work, more effort, more accountability. It's the easier things that tend to slip, which this system, that succession plan gives them both of those. This is the need, this is the want. And a lot of the incentivized portion to getting people to do the PT is because they see the people in their class progressing and they're like, why am I not progressing, right? I'm here just as much as they are. I see them every day. Well, then as a coach, when you sit down with them, you're like, that's where you get to be honest. Like, are you pushing as hard as they are? Well, yeah, I am. Okay. Well, what else are you doing? right? Like, how's your nutrition? That's where you get to dive into all the other stuff, and everybody has different things that they offer. Some people have nutrition in their gym. I mean, dude, that sky's the limit what you get to do with that success plan, right? But what I realized is little at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you tell people that don't want to pay for the dieting, nutrition services, like, what is the basic bottom line you can give them? Start small. Take out a couple things out of your diet. Like, so that's how the PT stuff has to work. That's how the succession plan has to work, is you have the big picture, yes, but your overall goal is to be red in front squats and you're blue. Okay, well, this is going to take a little while. However, right, little plans. So you have to have that time stamp of like, okay, by 2 months you should be one repping, doing things that are going to build you up into where you need to be. And then you can start talking about other programs like small ob, and hey, let's do some PT, and we'll do some, I mean, there's other things. But what I, again, with the succession plan for me and what I've been doing so far is small is better. Meaning for me, it's small. For them, it's big, because they see me put my notes and it's just like, here's your homework, right? But I break it down and I say, this is only the extra things that you need to do on top of what you're already doing if you want to progress, if you want your core to get stronger, if you want to get, back squats or front squats or whatever the goal is, right? A lot of times it's people that are just wanting to improve in technique, mainly like cleans, snatches, anything like that, if they're really wanting to get into that general region. But so far, I haven't really had advanced athletes or higher tiered athletes that want to do PT. It's usually my people that are down in that, anywhere between yellow to blue category, because they want to move up and be the intermediate athletes, right? So, having those goal setting sessions, dude, that, I mean, like I said, man, it was just like, as soon as I saw that, it was just another like, dude, this is so much easier. Like, oh my God, it's in the system. I follow the guides. It's a tool. It's literally a systematic tool. You go step 1, 2, 3, 4 on down the line, and you just follow it. It's literally that easy. In the beginning, I was like, man, this is a lot of shit. But once I did one, I was like, dude, this is super easy. Then I literally, once I did my first one, I was like, who wants PT? Right? Because I got a system that's ready to go. And guess what? It uses level method, which I know is what you want to do. As soon as I started telling people that, boom, dude, I had people like, oh, I want to do it. Oh, I want to do it. I started setting up PT sessions. I was like, all right, now I'm creating more work for myself.
Yeah. What's so funny is that, like, what you're doing with the success plan is you're creating clarity and focus and prioritization, right? And that's where simplicity really comes in. Is like, if anybody who's coached, like, I mean, even with yourself, think about like when you get excited about something, you pile everything on, and then after a week, it's all gone. It's just these really small things. And it's interesting that you're using the success plan specifically for PT, because that's really the highest level service that you can get. And if you can get somebody into the success plan, like, regardless whether it's I always say that you need a because, like, you need a reason for people. And so if you're a Legion gym listening and you have success plans, you can reach out. This is just an idea to reach out to old clients or current clients and say, we have access to a tool, and we're wanting to put people through this. Would you want to set up a strategy session or whatever, right? And then once you get somebody on a call, everybody has a goal. So like, what do you want? And so this tool can be used. It can be used specifically for fitness, but you could use it for any project. It's like, what do you want? What's the picture of what you want? Then why is that? And then what needs to happen? Prioritize those, and boom, you have a plan. So even if you get in touch with old members, have a few do it. And even if they don't sign up, they're walking away with like a game plan of exactly what to do. And next time they think about, maybe I should join the gym, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, it's just, there's so much goodwill given when you create that clarity for someone, and they can just walk away knowing what to do.
It's huge, man. It really is. Basically, the way I kind of sold it for the first couple of people, I was like, hey, let's do a 30-minute consultation. Let's sit down. I got this system. I actually bring them right back here. I mean, they sit like right next to me. They look at my computer screen, and we sit there, and I'll sit and I'll have a conversation first, build the idea of what we're doing, kind of get some ideas flowing. Okay. All right, cool. Now I turn around and they're right next to me over my shoulder, and I just start typing. I'm like, okay, this is kind of, okay, this this is what you said, right? And they're like, oh yeah, you know, because we'll kind of re-summarize instead of me repeating it and then doing it all later. I just do it with them, because then they get to see the actual what they said put down on fucking paper. Yeah, technically, right? They get to see it. Once they see it, it becomes permanent. I mean, how many times have you heard, you know, the idea of creating ideas or brainstorming? Like, you have to write it down. You're like one of the number one guys that I know that talks about writing shit down, right? When you start teaching members how to do that, it starts creating clarity, like you said, but it gives them purpose, because now it's black and white. It's written down. So to them, that means that it is now a thing. When it's an idea and you spit back and forth, great. 30 seconds later, guess what? They forgot everything you fucking said. Guarantee. I tell my students this in class all the time. I'm like, I'm going to explain this assignment to you. In 30 seconds after I get done, you're going to fucking forget everything. And I'm going to get 15,000 fucking emails from everybody saying, oh, hey, how do you do this assignment again? I'm like, read the assignment instructions. Like, Jesus. Members, people are people, dude. Like, you have to be able to just sit down and be with people. Like, look at them as people. And look at them like as if they're like your family member. Like, how would you give a family member advice, right? You would sit and talk with them and try to delve into a little bit more. Members are the same thing, man. That's what you got to do. You have to give them the time of day to give an opportunity for them to say it out loud and then put it down so they can see it. Now it becomes a tangible map, a tangible plan. Exactly. You have it written down. Now they can look at it and be like, this is my map. This is my mini map for just me, right? That's
I'm getting motivated. I'm gonna go do some right now. I'm gonna like, just pull it out. Start. Like, what's so crazy when I first the fundamental ideas of the success plan come from Tony Robbins. So if you've studied any of Tony Robbins stuff, I mean, people, there's a system of thinking called RPM, and the RPM planning method, and we've taken that and just and applied it. But when I first learned about this, which was a number of years ago, my mind was blown that I could like choose anything that I wanted to do and then like break down and have a plan. And that plan, if then followed, should get me to there. And the more times I do that, and the more times I build plans and think things through, the better I get. And as a coach, so now if I've done hundreds of these things, I do them with people all the time for all sorts of different reasons and different goals and whatever. Yeah. But you start to learn and understand and be able to chunk and help people and guide people. And as a fitness coach, it's pretty simple. People are going to have like pretty much the same handful of things that they want to do, right? But at the same time, you become like a ninja, knowing exactly how to build and construct something and know how much somebody can bite off, what do they need to have as a must or not. You know, it's just really cool technology that, you know, as a coach, is about the most valuable thing you can do. Because if you can deliver value like that, it's like, that's what the whole thing is about. Right.
Yeah, no, it's true, man. And again, it goes back to building that, but then the word of mouth, because if you do it right for somebody, guess what they're going to do? They're going to tell somebody else in the class, because they're going to be like, hey, you've been improving. Like, what have you been doing? Well, I started working with Coach AJ, blah, blah, blah. We have the success plan. And they're like, oh my God, I want to do it. Dude, it's, yeah, you create it, you build it, whatever, and then you implement it, and then people will follow. Like, don't be afraid. I guess the biggest thing is people hate change. People think they're adding more onto, and by people I mean like gym owners and coaches. Like, I don't want to add more onto my plate. I get it, man. I know what it's like to be a gym owner. Like there's times it fucking sucks, dude. Like, on top of all the other things that I do in my life. But if you want to make the system work for you and you want to make it better for your life, these systems that you have put in place for us on Level Method, it is eventually going to make your life easier. It truly will. You just have to start it. Like the social media stuff, like if you don't use that, you should. You guys create the social media stuff for us already. I just change a couple things, add my hashtags in there, you know, maybe change a picture up if I feel like it needs it. Like, it's already created. Why make more work for yourself? Why do you not use Level Method programming if you use the Level Method in your gym? Like, that's another question. I mean, I get it. Everybody has their own thing that they want to do, but dude, I have this conversation with people all the time. I'm like, there are gyms who use this that don't use Level Method programming, and I get it, you know, but in the same token, I'm like, it makes sense. Like, why create more work for yourself, right? Like, use the programming because it ties in with your goal setting stuff. Why would you not use it, right? Like, how do you then you're having to create all your own data. Like, oh shit, my programming for the last 6 weeks didn't work. Okay, well, I guess you get yourself to blame for that because you created the programming. You're not creating anything else for anybody else. I don't know. Anyway,
well, it's funny, dude, because it's like you've really, you know, you've hit on the systems. Like everything that we've built is specifically designed to make things easier. But the problem with systems is that it takes upfront work to build them. And that's always for a gym owner who's running around doing a million things. It is one of the most difficult things to take a step back and work on these big sort of like chunky machines in the gym that you don't really want to address sometimes. You don't want to go back and write a bunch of emails and have follow-up campaigns. But as you start to build it out and you start to think like a business owner who builds systems, what ends up happening is, yes, the work is front loaded. So you might have to grind and all the hustle and all the stuff. And you might have to do that for a period of time, but you're doing it knowing that it's going to start to taper off. Eventually it will 100%. Taper off. So I don't mind working really hard and spending a lot of time building systems because I know that I'm not going to do this same work forever. But if I've built my life where I'm like sprinting at full speed just to maintain homeostasis, that's not a good thing. This is how you eventually just bury yourself and burn out and you can't do anything. So it's like systems are the key. And we're always talking about that. I think you get it totally. Like you clearly understand the value of just plug and play. Don't worry. Don't obsess about trying to do everything. Cause I was that guy too. And I'm sure you were too in the early days, you know, it's like
100%.
You want to do everything. It's like you want to be the rugged individualist entrepreneur gonna make everything happen. But it's like, shit, man, at some point we got to be like, okay, where's the leverage here? You know?
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, you see people day in, day out, you talk to people, you talk to other gym owners, you have friends who are gym owners. I mean, everybody has a story of how they did it and how they had to overcome things. Maybe some of them haven't even overcame things yet. And they just haven't found that stepping point. You know, for me, it was developing a staff, a team of people that was going to help do more of that stuff outside on the floor so I can work more on building the systems that I needed back here. So therefore, these start running on their own and sustain themselves where I just have to check in on them from time to time. Maybe, you know, I got to jump on the social media post, set them all up for the month. I mean, smaller stuff, right? And then I get the other coaches involved with what I'm doing. So eventually, I don't have to do the whole set it up for the month. I can have a coach do that. And I can have the coaches start setting up success plans on their own. Like eventually the systems, once I learn them and create and use what you've created, I figure them out. I do what works best for me in my gym. And I get them slowly on board to learn how to do it. The systems that it took me a little bit front loading to kind of delve into and kind of spend more time, I now know them. And now I'm teaching my staff to know them. So that way, guess what? In the end, the machine runs itself. I just squirt a little oil here, little oil there, boom, keep things running, make sure people are happy. If there's a chink in the chain somewhere, I look into it, figure it out, fix it. So that way it doesn't happen again, hopefully. You know, I mean, dude,
and you know, well, real quick, that you know, fixing something that's messed up is it's totally easy to do when you have bandwidth. Right. So you already have this bandwidth and something goes wrong. You're like, oh, okay, no problem. But if everything's going wrong and then there's another thing wrong, you're like, shit.
Yeah. And you get overwhelmed and then you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of let it cruise for a minute and see what happens. Sometimes you're like, oh, it'll work itself out. Not that some things don't, but I guarantee, man, like there are some things that just will not work themselves out. People don't work themselves out. I tell you that. If you have a problem fucking person, they don't work themselves out. They will not become a better person. They are the person they are. Deal with it. Same with problems that you have in the gym. Like some problems are going to be problems until you fix them. And some people just have that hard time. And I'm the same, man. We're all people. I've been in those shoes. I've been in the shoes with this business. Like there are some things I'm like, that's a problem. 2 months down the road, that's still a problem. I should really address that. Another 2 months, I'm like, all right, this is fucking, all right, I got to do something about this, right? So then I start figuring things out. I mean, it takes time, man, and believing in systems, believing in the progression, just like we preach to our members about the system, dude. Like we as owners, we as coaches have to also do the same thing. We have to stop and we have to trust in the system, trust in the progression for ourselves and our systems that we're now implementing into other people or on the gym, I should say. It's as easy as that.
Yeah.
I mean, for some people, like, that's not easy, but no, it is easy. It truly is. You just have to give a little, man. It's just kind of the way it works. I mean, the world will continue to keep revolving, whether your gym is in place or not. The system will continue to keep revolving, whether you're implementing it or not. Like, you just have to want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to believe in it, just like you guys talk about when you start the system. Like, you have to buy into it, or your members are not going to buy into it, right? Like, you see that in every system. You see that in gyms that don't run Level Method, that run some other kind of program. If the owner or the coach isn't believing in the program or the system that you're doing, if you have staff that doesn't believe in the system as much as you do, that's a problem. You have to fix that problem. You have to address it. And that's where you have to sit down and talk to them like a person. And again, dude, I fired coaches. I've had to. I'm like, you don't believe in what I'm doing? You can just be a member then, or you can leave my gym. Like, I really don't care, but you're not going to be on my coaching staff if you don't believe in what we're using and what we're doing. It's that simple. Again, that takes time, that takes practice. You have to be able
it's leadership.
Bottom line, leadership.
We talk about that so much. It's like number one, leaders, they have to lead by example. And this is like 100%. Military, like, because if you're in the military and the leader doesn't lead by example, that's not going to be good, right? Like, you're going to be like, who the fuck? And that's it. Can be exactly. It can be a big problem. And I think that, like, taking just the fundamentals of knowing exactly what you're here for. Right. And when we think about, like, what sort of business do we want, and Level Method, it's like it's fitness for, like, everybody. Right. And that's the whole, and then we're building all the systems around to have a well operating machine. It's like, I built all these things in my gym, and then I started Level Method. And, you always think, like, oh, businesses are going to be different. So I have my gym. Every day is about members, about getting new members, keeping members, all that sort of stuff. And then you think to yourself, okay, we're going to start Level Method now, and it's going to be different. It's all the same stuff. Right now, though, in Level Method, the systems are like, we've got like 3 or 4 big, huge things that need to be happening. So, like, the way somebody's onboarded, but it's exactly the same as the way that members are onboarded to the gym, right? It's like, it's all universal and all fundamental. And you as a business person, you can't get away from it. Right. Like, either you accept it and then embrace it and start to understand, like, oh, all the best companies in the world are systemized. There's not a single example of someone who's doing everything themselves. It just doesn't happen, because it's impossible to, unless you're like, you are a painter and you paint one thing and it's worth like $100 million or something. That's maybe like an outside, but it's like, for the vast majority of any business that's successful, you have to embrace that systems idea. And I think it takes a number of years. It takes to get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, I can see why I would want to build this now, so later I don't have to work so much.
Exactly. So, no, it's true, man. I mean, part of one of the other things I do some consultation stuff too as well. Like, I work with organizations, from big ones to small ones, internally, about communication, because it comes down to communication is key, right? Like, you have to be able to, in those systems, communication is what makes the systems run, right? Because it's people that all have an intricate part of the system and how it works and flows. And if you have a problem here, it stops the system. The system stops rolling, or it has some independent areas that it can keep rolling and doing things. But there are some points where the people become the problem, and it's usually a communication thing is what it is. It generally is. I mean, that's why they hire people like me who come in and be like, all right, let's take a look at your communication, structure. How are you guys disseminating information? What are the most important things? How often are you doing meetings? How do you engage with people who, are, conflicting between departments? I mean, there's all sorts of different things. I sit down, figure out what the problem is, and then I give them solutions and I write them down. And it all has to deal with communication. It all has to deal with how to create a fluid communication system, because communication is its own system as well. And you have to create that with the systems that you're implementing. So again, it's part of all of it. And I mean, a lot of the things, again, that I talked about, talking to people as people and things like that, like, communication is a system in itself. And if you don't have the communication piece fixed, your other systems aren't going to work very well. That's just, I mean, it's bottom line. It's the way it's going to be, because part of your systems are people, and you have to create that. And you have to make sure that that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So, and it's really important to kind of create that and generate that with people. You have to understand. Yeah.
I know we're over time, but I was thinking we should probably do another one. We could spend, I think there's a lot of, team building, how you do team meetings, that sort of stuff. So maybe we do a round 2 at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, I want to thank you so much for being on the call. I think that this was badass. I'm always get super geeked out when I talk about level method stuff.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. I love it too, man. Like I said, my members talk about it because I talk about it, dude. I'm right there with you, man. I'm fangirl, pom poms, fucking level method. Send me some pom poms and level method shit on there, dude. I'm all about it, man. I love it.
Awesome, man. It's a great system. Thanks so much, man. And I'll be in touch with you online, and then maybe we'll touch base on text too.